There's a bottle sitting in a hardware store right now. It costs under $2. It will make any wall paint, any color, any brand, any surface, last 30 years without peeling, without chalking, without bubbling off in the rain. They stopped putting it in standard paint in the 1970s. Not because it stopped working, because it worked so well that no one could build a profitable business around it. You cannot put a subscription on linseed oil. You cannot trademark a 50-year-old chemical reaction. You cannot invoice someone for physics. Stay with me. Because what happened in 1972 and what one major trade organization spent $40 million lobbying to make sure your painter never learned in school is the part your contractor was never told, and the part you are about to understand completely. The global paint industry generates $160 billion every year. Every year. That number is built on one assumption, that you will need to repaint, often. The average exterior paint job lasts 5 to 7 years before it starts to chalk, peel, or fade past what you can ignore. Your painter knows this. Your paint manufacturer designed it this way. The industry calls it service life. You call it writing a check you did not plan for. Here is the detail embedded quietly inside their own industry data. The technology to make that repaint cycle unnecessary has existed since before your grandparents were born. It costs 30 cents per gallon of paint to use. It works on any standard acrylic or latex paint you can buy today, mixed and rolled or brushed on exactly as you normally would. There is no special equipment. No professional application, no licensing. And the number that should make you sit up straight, over 30 years, the average homeowner without this information spends somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 repainting the outside of their house alone, not restoring it, not renovating it, repainting it. The same surfaces, the same colors, the same job, 5 or 6 times in a row. This costs 30 cents a gallon. They did not remove this from modern paint because it failed. That is the part worth holding onto. They removed it because it worked too well to anchor a repeat purchase business around. You cannot patent raw linseed oil. You cannot charge a monthly fee for a tree. You cannot build a $160 billion industry on a solution that solves the problem permanently on the first application. Your paint company has never once mentioned this to you. Not in a brochure, not on the product label, not in a single email or advertisement. That silence is not an oversight. That silence is a business model. The science behind what this additive does to a paint film is even more damaging to that business model than the story of how it was quietly removed from modern formulas. That is what comes next. I'm not going to tell you this is a new invention. Take yourself back to Egypt around 1500 BC. The craftsmen painting the walls and ceilings of burial chambers were not using what you would call paint. They were grinding pigment into linseed oil, pressing it onto stone, letting it cure in the dry heat. Those painted walls are still intact today, not preserved behind glass, not touched up by restorers. Pigment still bonded to stone after 3,500 years. The Romans used the same principle for exterior surfaces. Viking shipbuilders in Scandinavia sealed timber with it for centuries. And in the 1400s, a Flemish painter named John van Eyck refined the formula so precisely that the oil films he created have never fully hardened. They are still slightly flexible, still bonded to the surface, 600 years later. Hanging in museums, not because they were lucky, because the chemistry was right. The reason it worked then is the same reason it works now, and it is something you have already seen today. Stay with me. I will show you exactly where. You have seen this your whole life. You just never connected the dots. Think about a leather boot left in a dry closet for a year. You pull it out and the surface is cracked, fine lines running across the toe. Press the leather and it is stiff. That is what happens when oil leaves a flexible material. The material dries rigid, and rigid things crack under pressure. Now rub some conditioner into that same boot, any oil-based conditioner, and let it sit overnight. The cracks do not come back. The leather moves again. It flexes without splitting. That is not a miracle. That is oil restoring microflexibility to a dried film. Your paint film works exactly the same way. Every exterior wall in your house is coated in a thin dried film, roughly the thickness of a few sheets of paper. Every summer that film expands in the heat. Every winter it contracts in the cold. Every rain hits it. Every UV ray from the sun slowly breaks the polymer chains holding it together. A rigid film can only survive that cycle so many times before it loses its grip and starts to peel. The oil does not soften the paint. It gives the dried film just enough flex, a fraction of a millimeter of movement, to survive the cycle without cracking or lifting. And because the film stays bonded, moisture never gets underneath. Moisture underneath is what drives peeling. Stop the moisture, stop the peel. Most people who try this get one step wrong. It is the very first decision. And it is the difference between a paint job that outlasts your roof and one that fails by the second summer. Here is everything you need. Here is what you need. I want to be honest with you about every single number. Raw linseed oil, not boiled, not polymerized. Raw. You will find it at any hardware store, any paint supply shop, and online. A 1 liter bottle costs $3. You use 2 tablespoons per gallon of paint. 1 liter gets you through 10 full gallons. The cost per gallon works out to 30 cents, less than a postage stamp, a clean measuring spoon. You likely already own one. A clean mixing stick, free with most paint purchases. Any standard interior or exterior latex or acrylic paint, any brand, any sheen, any color. A clean bucket if you're mixing more than 1 gallon at a time. That is genuinely it. Here is the one thing most people get wrong. They buy boiled linseed oil. The label says linseed oil. The bottle looks almost identical, and it destroys the result. Boiled linseed oil has metal drying agents added to it, usually cobalt or manganese compounds. Those dryers make it cure fast. That sounds helpful. It is not. When those metal compounds meet the acrylic binders in modern latex paint, they react unevenly. The surface of the paint film skins over and seals while the interior is still soft. The outside locks, the inside stays wet. What you see 6 months later looks like the wall is breathing. Small domes, tiny blisters spread across the surface. You press one and it collapses. The paint underneath is not wet. It is just trapped with nowhere to expand into. You peel it back, strip the whole section, and repaint from scratch. Most people blame the paint brand. Most people blame the surface prep. It is neither. It is the wrong oil. Raw linseed oil dries slowly. That is not a flaw. That is the entire point. The slow cure lets the oil and the paint binders integrate into one continuous, flexible film instead of 2 separate layers. One rigid, one soft, fighting each other from inside the wall. Now here is the process, step by step. Start with the paint, enclosed. Before you open it, decide your ratio. Write it on the can with a marker if you need to. For exterior paint on any surface that sees direct weather, full sun, rain, freeze-thaw cycles, use 2 tablespoons of raw linseed oil per gallon. For interior walls or exterior surfaces in dry climates that rarely see hard freezing, use 1 tablespoon per gallon. The drier and more stable the environment, the less flex the film needs. The harsher the weather, the more it benefits from flexibility. Open the paint and stir it first, fully. Pigment settles, and the bottom of every paint can is thicker and denser than the top. If you add oil to an unstirred can, the oil mixes only with the thinner top layer. The result is uneven. Some sections of the wall get more oil, some get less. Uneven oil means uneven flexibility. Uneven flexibility means the wall ages at different rates in different patches. You will see it. It looks like certain sections held up and certain sections did not, even though you painted them at the same time. Stir for 2 full minutes, not a few passes with the stick. 2 full minutes, pulling from the bottom and folding over the top. The paint will look uniform to your eye before it actually is. Trust the 2 minutes. Then add the oil in a thin, steady stream while you keep stirring. Do not dump it in the center. Pour it in slowly, a thin thread of oil moving into the rotation of the stirring stick. The oil needs to emulsify into the paint rather than pool on top. You will see the mixture become very slightly thinner. The texture changes just a little. That is correct. That is what you want. Now set the bucket down. Let it rest for 5 minutes without touching it. The oil is still distributing itself through the paint. If you apply immediately, the oil has not finished dispersing, and you will see horizontal streaking where the brush or roller drags the oil concentration along the wall surface. Most people blame the brush quality or the roller nap. It is not either. It is impatience. 5 minutes. Then stir once more, 10 slow rotations, nothing aggressive, and apply. What comes next is the step most people skip. It is the only one that makes everything before it permanent. Pay close attention. Let the first coat dry completely before the second. Not mostly dry, completely. Linseed oil extends the drying window by about 20 to 30 minutes per coat. If you are used to recoating in 4 hours, plan for 5. If you rush the second coat over a first coat that is still slightly soft, the 2 coats do not bond into one unified film. They sit on top of each other as separate layers, and 2 separate layers peel apart at the seam. One full unified film, applied in 2 coats with proper drying time between, is what creates the 30-year bond. After the final coat has dried for a full 24 hours, do the thumbnail test. Press your thumbnail firmly into the paint at the edge of a door frame or window trim. Steady pressure, hard enough to leave a mark if the surface is soft. The paint should not dent at all. If it dents, the oil ratio is too high for your environment. Drop to 1 tablespoon per gallon on the next batch and test again. If it passes, if the surface is hard and the thumbnail leaves no mark, what is on that wall is finished. It will not peel, it will not chalk, it will not bubble in the summer or crack in the first hard freeze. Now think about what this means past 1 room. 1 gallon of modified paint covers roughly the area of 1 large exterior wall section. About the size of the wall you're likely looking at right now, 30 cents an additive. That is the entire cost difference between the paint job you always got and the one that lasts 3 decades. Scale that to a full house exterior. A standard home takes between 12 and 15 gallons to coat properly. 12 gallons, 30 cents each in linseed oil. That is $3.60 in additive cost for the entire outside of your house, against the industry average of $4,000 to $6,000 for professional exterior repaint, every 5 to 7 years. Over 30 years, without this, you pay for that job 5 or 6 times. That is somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 over 3 decades for the same surfaces, the same walls, the same house. With this, you pay for it once, maybe twice if you live somewhere with extreme coastal weather or near constant UV. The savings is not small money. It is a vacation, a year of car payments, a full semester of college tuition, spent on paint that did not need to fail that fast. Now scale further. 10 houses on one street, each one using this on their next repaint. The combined saving across 30 years is somewhere in the range of $200,000. Not construction money, not major renovation money, paint maintenance money, quietly collected year after year on a cycle that was never necessary. There are fishing villages on the coast of Denmark where houses were painted with raw linseed oil paint formulas in the 1950s. The same houses, same paint film, still standing against salt air, North Sea wind, and temperature swings that crack asphalt. Not because someone maintained them constantly, because the chemistry was right once. There are timber structures in Norway still wearing their original linseed oil finish from before the Second World War. Exterior wood, decades of snow and sun, still bonded, still sealed. That is what you are replicating when you stir 2 tablespoons into a gallon of paint. Not a science experiment, not a trick. A formula that outlasted empires, cross-Atlantic trade routes, and the invention of everything that was meant to replace it. No monthly product, no contractor on a 5-year return schedule. No new formula promising this time it will hold. One bottle used correctly, retiring a cost that was never inevitable in the first place. This does not work equally on every surface. On very smooth, non-porous surfaces, sealed concrete, bare metal, or walls with a thick existing layer of oil-based enamel, raw linseed oil can reduce adhesion rather than improve it. The oil needs a surface with some texture to anchor into. A genuinely slick substrate gives it nowhere to grip. If you're painting over old oil-based enamel without priming first, test a small section, 1 square foot in a less visible area. Let it cure 48 hours and do the thumbnail test before committing to the full surface. In climates with consistently high humidity, above 80%, common in certain coastal and tropical zones, the extended drying time from the oil can leave the surface tacky long enough to trap airborne pollen and dust before it fully sets. In those environments, keep the ratio to 1 tablespoon per gallon and plan your painting for the cooler, lower humidity part of the day. Early morning, before the humidity climbs. This also does not fix what is underneath. If moisture is migrating through the wall from inside the structure, it will continue to push the film off, regardless of how flexible the film is. If the underlying stucco or masonry has structural cracks, the paint film will follow the crack, and the oil makes the film more durable. It does not change the substrate. Identify what you're actually solving before you paint. There's a wall in the Valley of the Kings, painted by someone whose name no history book recorded, still showing its original color. The pigment is still bonded to the stone. No climate control, no museum glass. Just linseed oil, pigment, heat, and time. There are houses on the coast of Norway still wearing paint applied before your parents were born. The salt air did not win. The freeze-thaw cycles did not win. Yours will too. The chemistry was always there. It never stopped working. It was just taken off the label, replaced with a formula you could be charged for again and again on a timetable someone else designed. I do not know what brought you here. It does not matter. It works either way.